Today's guest is Janaea Ote, a homeschooling mom and founder of Kids and Culture Camp, an educational enrichment program for homeschoolers and conventionally schooled children located in Washington, D.C. Janaea, welcome to the Liberated podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So excited to have you here and to hear really about this fascinating entrepreneurial journey that you've been on since you launched Kids and Culture back in 2010. And so I imagine there's been lots of changes and growth and sort of lessons learned over 15 years of your experience as an education entrepreneur. I would love to hear all about that and your wisdom perhaps for new founders for who are just getting started on their journey. But let's start, if we could, Janaea, with what was happening in your life, in your career, in your community back in 2010 that led you down the path of creating Kids and Culture Camp.
Excellent starting point. And this is something I just absolutely love talking about. So I have two boys, well, two young men now. My oldest at the time was about 3 years old, and we started researching schools in our area. And I was a little disappointed with what I was finding out about the public schools in our neighborhood. And I started meeting lots of people who were homeschooling. And so I talked to my husband about it, and he said, well, we can give it a try. Well, at the same time, when I was exploring homeschooling, I was also researching summer programs in the DC area because I'm thinking, okay, he's 3, eventually he'll be 5 or 6, and I want my son to be able to attend some summer camp programs. And so I did my research, and what I found was that a lot of the camps in the Washington, D.C. area, and really in general, were singular in focus. So they were a sports camp or a chess camp or a dance camp. And I wanted something that would kind of expose my son to a bunch of different aspects, especially culture. And so, like I said, I was meeting different homeschoolers, and I said, you know what, we can start our own summer camp program. And I had joined a couple different homeschool communities at that point, and I sent an email out on the Sankofa homeschool listserv, and I said, is anyone interested in starting our own summer camp program? I'm an attorney by training. I can do the legal research. That's no problem. Let me know if you're interested. And about 8 to 10 moms answered that call. And by 2010, we started meeting in my basement, actually, and all of us were homeschooling mamas. And so our children were playing in the basement, and then we were upstairs, meeting around my dining room table, and Kids and Culture Camp was born. So I would tell you that my inspiration was my 3 year old at the time, who is now 19, homeschooled him all the way through. And we just have an amazing group of moms that came together to really make this happen.
Oh, I love that origin story. So, was it sort of designed then to be a summer camp or a vacation camp, or had you also thought about what we today call micro schools or sort of these homeschool collaboratives and co-ops? I guess what was sort of your thought process in the initial structure?
So initially, in talking to some of the other moms, the Sankofa Homeschool Collective had been meeting, and so there was talk about creating a school, and we were able to get the camp together a little more quickly. Sankofa Homeschool was meeting, but it wasn't a formalized school, and so the idea was really to provide high quality enrichment programs for children during the summer. And because it was run by all homeschooling mamas, we wanted to make it open, to the community, children in the community, and to provide a safe place for our own children as well as children in the community. So the idea wasn't necessarily a co-op, or a micro school at the time, but it quickly grew. I did not go into this with the vision that, it's going to be a limited liability company. Within 2 years, we will have employees and, 10 to 15 independent contractors. That was never my thought, but that's where it evolved very, very quickly. And
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
that's okay. From the summer program, we have launched many other programs that you could consider, along the lines of micro schooling.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear more about that because I do talk to founders periodically who got started with a summer camp program or an after school program, um, often because they wanted to test the waters, they wanted to build up some rapport with local families, maybe work out some of the startup kinks, make sure there's demand for what they're doing, and often it can be easier from sort of a regulatory perspective to start a summer camp than perhaps to start a micro school or something similar to that. So it tends to be an entry point for founders to start with a camp or an after school program and then evolve. And that sounds similar to what's happened with Kids and Culture Camp. So take us through what were those early years like from your beginning startup days, and then those, kind of first 5 years, what was happening there with the program?
Absolutely. So, in the beginning, our very first camp was held on the campus of Howard University, which is my alma mater. And that was pretty spectacular to have our first camp there. And we had 70 children. So, we had no idea that we would have that many children in our, inaugural year. But that's how many children we had.
Can I
And
just ask, Jeanette, so was that 70, was that a mix of homeschoolers and conventionally schooled kids that first year?
absolutely, absolutely. I would say homeschoolers maybe were about 20 to 30.
Okay.
And then the
Wow.
rest were children that attended private schools, public schools, throughout DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Yeah.
And like I said, it just it blossomed very quickly. The moms and the children actually absolutely loved the program, and so we decided, this is something that we wanted to do every summer for our children. So within a couple years, we've moved around to different public charter schools. Those have been our primary partners, like our host schools, in terms of the space,
Mm.
but we also have developed our own curriculum. So every year the moms come together and we write the curriculum based upon the countries that we're studying because kids and culture, the children study a different country each week. And one of the things that was very important to us, like I said, camps were very singular in nature. So our camp includes chess, it includes yoga, African drumming, field trips, water play, 3 to 4 cultural lessons, which covers art, history, geography, notable landmarks, people. The children receive those lessons 3 to 4 times throughout the week, and then field trips, and so it's and cultural cooking classes. So they learn how
Wow.
to make a traditional dish, and so it really, really did evolve. So the first 5 years, we moved around to different public charter schools, but at one point, we actually grew to about 150 children and then we had another campus. So we had 2 camps going on simultaneously. We had our main campus and then a smaller satellite campus with about 50 children. And then the pandemic hit.
So before we get to the pandemic, yeah, I'd love to hear a bit about so these 150 students, were they coming, was that kind of all at once and they were over kind of multi-weeks in the summer, or was it kind of spread out? They could pick a week here, pick a week there. What was the structure?
Good question. So it is a 4 week program,
Okay.
and we wanted the camp to be flexible so parents could choose however many weeks they want their children to attend. So some parents may come, they may enroll week 1 and then enroll their children for week 4. Normally, week 2 falls during 4th of July. And so some, parents, they take that week off. But we have many campers that attend all 4 weeks. And one thing that's very unique about our program, which really speaks to the love and the care that's poured in by the moms, is that generally when a camper starts, they age out of our program. So we start at age 3,
Mm.
and campers age out when they're 13. And so we have many campers who started at 3, attended Kids and Culture until they were 12. And then when they aged out at 13, we started a counselors and training program. And so youth ages 13 through 17 can come back and work with us during the summer. And generally, those are campers that have, been with us in their formative years. And so they're very excited to come back and really serve as mentors to the younger campers. So that's, we wanted the flexibility for parents. We have before care and we have after care, and then just the general camp hours from 9 to 3. Before care starts at 7:45, and then after care runs until 5. So we wanted parents to have that flexibility. And I'll tell you, one of the main requests we get every year is that we extend the program, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and why don't you just start a formal school? So we,
Yeah.
we do get those requests quite often.
So, I mean, there's so much to talk about, but I guess let's go with that. Why don't you create a school
Yeah, that's a good
or or a
question.
micro school or something
Absolutely.
similar? Yeah.
Um, it takes a whole year of planning to do what we do at the
Mm.
level that we do it. And I love my husband dearly, but I think if I had my own school, I don't know that he would love me so much. Just because I have to pour so much into it, and he sacrificed a lot in terms of, time and energy and commitment that I put into the camp. And so for me, doing something, having something available for children during the summer, that's where my passion really, that's where my passion was. And then having littles, focusing on homeschooling them during the school year, it's a lot to juggle, having your own business, having a staff, having a community of 40 to 50 people on staff during the summer and managing all that, that is a lot. And so we did talk about a school, but in terms of kind of my bandwidth and just my responsibilities to home, my husband and the children, I think it would have been a little too much for me.
Yeah, sort of knowing kind of where your passions are, where your bandwidth is, what your priorities are. I think that that's really interesting and important for prospective founders and current founders to hear because they might be pulled into different directions and they might want to be able to satisfy parents' demands for something else that could be beyond the scope of really what they want their business to focus on. So you good advice there. So for the first decade, you started in 2010, obviously saw tremendous growth, lots of time and energy spent in building up the camp. What other changes did you notice over that first 10-year period? Again, kind of turning down opportunities, it sounds like is a big piece of that. Any other sort of challenges or iterations during that first decade?
Yeah, so I think some of the main challenges, because we set the bar so high, when you have home educators that are leading every class session for every age group, we just have a special touch, and we really put something extra into the program itself. So not only were we invested because our children were attending, but we treat every child as if they are our own. And so one of the challenges, and I still think it's an ongoing challenge, is finding educators, as we grow, as our mamas, like most of our moms, except for one, all of our children have aged out of the program. And so finding moms that have that same passion, that level of commitment, making sure, invested to make sure that the program stays at a high quality, that can be a little difficult. And so we did start recruiting teachers who teach professionally during the school year from some of our partner schools. And that's been very, very helpful. But there's still a culture with kids and culture because, as you know, home educators, micro schoolers, we do things a little differently than public education. And so the teachers that have taught with us that work for traditional schools during the school year have been fabulous. And just getting the word out, in terms of what we're looking for, who we're looking for, that love and that compassion that we want to come through in the classroom, that can be a little challenging. And like I said, right now we're a little bit at that crossroads because most of our co-founders, their children have aged out of the program. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there so many questions for you there, but maybe you could go into a little bit more about some of those differences between the way kind of homeschoolers or microschoolers approach teaching and learning and what traditional classrooms look like.
sure, I think what some of the major differences are, we're not wed to a particular curriculum that we have to follow. There's no time pressure for the children in terms of you have to learn this by this point. You have these standardized tests. You want to make sure that you perform on these tests. And one thing as a homeschooler, I wanted to make sure that my children never had test anxiety. So
Hmm.
my children did participate in standardized tests because I wanted them to be prepared. But I think just taking that time for each individual child as much as possible and then allowing their kind of creative side um, to be released in the classroom. And so that kids and culture is very, very hands-on. And we try to cover all the different learning styles that children may have. And so I think that's probably one of the differences. You know, we do have a structure, we have a start and stop time in terms of our cultural lessons, but just knowing that every child is different and really nurturing that difference and showing the child that we appreciate them, we appreciate what they bring and their knowledge base, you know, where they are at that time and letting that creativity flow. So I think those are probably some of the differences. I'm a product of a public school, but my children have never attended a traditional school. We've participated in co-ops and, you know, different micro schools, but they've never, you know, attended a traditional public school or private school.
Yeah. So, okay, I sort of interrupted you as you're getting to 2020, kind of the first decade in, things are going along smoothly, and then all of a sudden we're confronted with a pandemic. So, what was that period like for you as a founder? And then what have the last 5 years been like?
Ooh. So the pandemic was interesting, as for most business owners, just trying to stay afloat because all of our programming was in person. You know, nothing was online, and obviously everything was shut down.
Yeah.
And so we did what most business owners, you know, did during that time. We moved our camps online. So we did offer summer camps, you know, during the pandemic. And then we also partnered with a couple schools that wanted to bring our cultural program to their school online. And so we were able to do that during the pandemic. And then thanks to a grant from the Vela Fund, Kids and Culture was able to develop a online asynchronous program called Culture Quest. And so the idea was to take what we do during the summer in person, where the children are learning about different countries and cultures, but capture that, you know, in a video format. And so we did create Culture Quest. We developed about 5 countries, again, with all of our own materials, maps, and extension of learning activities that the children can utilize, and that's available on our website. So it was difficult, you know, just to make it through and to make sure the bills can get paid, and to stay connected with our families because I believe once the pandemic hit, we had already opened up camp registration. So we had already collected close to fifty to $70,000 in camp registrations, and all of that had to be refunded. But we still had bills to pay because we had spent some money in preparation, you know, for the camp. So it was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough, but we survived. And I think some really good, you know, programs have come out of the pandemic, like our online programs. And we also taught live online homeschool classes for a few years.
Hmm.
And our educators are great. So we had, you know, students from all over, you know, all over the United States and even some from other countries that would participate in that class. We shifted that model a little bit and we're focused more on in-person programming again, but we still keep that asynchronous program available.
So really, taking lemons and making lemonade in the wake of a crisis and seeing new opportunities sprout from that, which is really great. And now things are back where they were, better than ever. I guess, what does this summer look like for you?
So we're still building. I mean, just to
Yeah.
be honest, we're still building. When I look back at our numbers, and I don't know how we did it, but at one point, so at camp, we grouped the children by ages, 3 to 5 year olds, 6 to 7 year olds, 8 to 9s, and 10 to 12 year olds. At one point, and the 3 to 5s are our biggest group. At one point, we had 5 different classes of 3 to 5 year olds, 15 in each class. This summer, we're back up to about 3 groups of 3 to 5 year olds. So I think we're at about 166 registrations, which is a
Wow.
total of about 116 children registered, and they can, you know, attend whatever weeks their parents choose. So we're still rebuilding, but our focus also has shifted a little more in terms of building the program. So we've partnered with schools to provide cultural assemblies, unity assemblies, to help promote cultural awareness and the love that we all should have one for another. Black History Month assemblies, we've also been able to coordinate some of those. And then we grew with an after school program. So we partnered with a couple schools in DC and Maryland, and we do provide cultural programming for their students in their after school program. And another major I guess, aspect of kids and culture that we added on is we provide childcare pop-up camps for children while adults attend their conferences. So we
Mm.
partnered with some national organizations and we go into the hotel, set up everything, make it beautiful, have all the wonderful, engaging activities for the children, and the parents can drop them off. They can come and check in on them, and they're having so much fun. So we bring kids and culture to these organizations, and that's been really, really fun because we get to travel too. Our educators get to travel. And then we're just thankful to be able to provide a service like that for parents where they can feel comfortable leaving their children while they're working or attending a conference.
Well, it sounds like a flourishing business for you, multifaceted with all kinds of different programs. And now that your kids are grown, is this sort of your full-time work, is managing and overseeing all of these programs?
Yes and no. Kerry, I'm actually in school myself, working on a third degree.
Wow.
And I have three more classes to finish, so 9 credits. But I've only taken one class a semester because
Mm,
I am taxi. I am, I'm mom, I am wife, and my youngest is 16. He's a junior in high school, but he's been taking dual enrollment classes since ninth grade. And he decided last month that he was going to graduate. So here
mm.
we are preparing, for graduation. So kids and culture is not necessarily full time for me because I'm still wearing, several different hats. But I do spend a great amount of time, just organizing, coordinating, working with our sponsors, our teachers, our partners, and organizing things. I enjoy it. So organizational leadership is something that comes very natural to me. I can close my eyes and organize pretty much anything very quickly. And then we just have such a wonderful group of educators that work with us. They make it very, very easy. And it's more of a family. It's really a family environment, and everyone looks forward to our reunions during the summer. And we're actually planning for a big Kids and Culture Camp reunion hopefully next year. So,
Oh wow, that's amazing. So you sort of alluded to this earlier, and I'd love to dig in a little bit more to the idea of sort of succession planning, or so many of today's founders, the founders that I talk to, are parents themselves. They often, like you, created a program because they didn't see around them in their community the program that they wanted, and so they realized that they had to build it themselves. And then they have that passion because their children are benefiting from the experience all through sort of the K to 12 timeline. And then when their kids graduate, some of them, are looking to potentially go off and do something else, or just that sort of fire isn't as strong because their kids aren't a part of the day-to-day of the program. So, what are your thoughts on sort of that succession planning or moving to like the second generation of a business?
yes.
Because I'll hear from founders who'll say, well, maybe we should just shut down. Others will say, well, I'm trying to figure out how to keep it going, but maintain the sort of quality and expectations, even though I don't want to be running it. All of the things that would happen in any kind of succession planning experience in any business or organization. It's not easy. And so I'd love to just hear your thoughts on that overall
Sure.
process.
I have a few thoughts about that. So the first one is, and many founders start off, as you said, as something being a passion project, right? Not thinking of it as a business. And that's where I was. And so you have to decide early on to make that shift because I was always comfortable as long as we broke even because this is for my kids, this is for the kids in the community. Let's make this happen. Well, now my kids have aged out. And so for the past several years, I've been making that mindset shift from still a community minded, and wanting everyone to benefit from the program, but this has to be profitable because I want it to continue. And also bringing on younger mamas who have younger children who are invested in the program just like I have been and the mom co-founders. And so that succession planning is really, really important. And I can tell you, I've been in it for a few years now, just kind of shifting the boat, turning the tide a different way. And even from getting different business certifications for Kids and Culture LLC, um, reaching out to business consultants, like having additional people on my team to help me shift that mindset and to grow Kids and Culture, that's important. And so I would say finding individuals who are like-minded, who have that same passion, maybe not the same motivation, but have a similar passion as you do, so that your baby, so that your project, so that your company can continue is important. Because, and I don't know if I mentioned this already, I physically live in Alabama, but the camp takes place in Washington, D.C., because that's where my company is based. And so I fly back and forth, every summer. And I've gotten to the point now, because of the succession planning, that younger moms are directing the camp. I come in the first week to help set up. I'm there for week one. I go back home and I come back week four. And so identifying individuals who can help you with that succession, that have that same passion or love and dedication and organization that you do is very, very important. And I'm so thankful that I found younger mamas that have that drive and that dedication. And so the succession planning, it's important. It's still going on. I would love for Kids and Culture to be around when my children have their children. That would be awesome. And so I'm planning for that, just setting things up financially, trying to lock in and develop more partnerships, with different organizations. Even the Model UN, I've had meetings with the Georgetown chapter of the Model UN, and we're looking at a partnership to strengthen Kids and Culture and bring the Model UN into our programming. So through those partnerships, the succession planning can definitely happen. And I would just tell founders, document everything that you can. Because one of the issues, the problems I had was that everything was in my head, but I'm not going to be around all the time to tell everyone, exactly what's in my head. So put your standard operating procedures in place. Have those handbooks and those manuals. And we've developed several of those for Kids and Culture, during the summer and even for our programs that happen during the school year. And so all of those things are very, very important, I think, when it comes to succession planning. Oh, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Great advice. Yeah, and I think that you said that you really developed sort of this entrepreneurial focus and more of the business-minded piece in more recent years. Would another piece of advice you might have for newer entrepreneurs now is to sort of take put on that entrepreneur hat earlier? Is that what you would suggest?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would suggest putting on that entrepreneur hat earlier. Utilize resources that are in your own community. The SBA in DC, there's the Women's Business Center. They've been a tremendous resource for me. And look into those certifications for women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. There are so many different certifications out there. And those certifications are helpful, not just because you have that, the logo to put on your website, but there are so many cohorts, there are so many business planning sessions where you meet like-minded entrepreneurs, and then you get access to all these different workshops.
Mm.
And so that's been a huge help. And yes, definitely start that planning early. Make sure your company's incorporated. Whether you have a nonprofit, or for profit, the legal structure is very, very important. Consider that. I know sometimes we start off and we're using, our own social security number. We don't have an EIN number, but try not to do that. Go ahead and get your EIN number, formalize, have that legal entity so that you have that legal protection. It's very important.
Yes, absolutely. And that sort of brings me to my next question, which is, you said you started your career as an attorney, kind of moved into entrepreneur. Thinking about your role in entrepreneurship, what have you found to be most rewarding as an entrepreneur?
Wow, that's a good question. I think really just the flexibility, honestly. Um, I enjoy being an entrepreneur. I absolutely enjoy what I do. I always wanted to go to law school and be an attorney, and I did that. I absolutely hated working at a large law firm. The hours, that I had to put in and all of that, I did not like that. And then I did start my own practice from home in preparation to have my first child. But I think just the flexibility that you have to spend with your family, to say no, to things that may not be a good fit or you're not comfortable with, I think that's probably the flexibility is probably the biggest advantage or thing that I've enjoyed the most.
So, Janae, as we begin to wrap up, there's been a lot of change in education and homeschooling, unconventional educational models over the past 15 years that you've been running Kids and Culture. What are you seeing? What are you excited about? Where do you think we're going in terms of homeschooling and similar models?
I think what I'm seeing is that parents have more choices, right? So it's not the I homeschool or my child is going to attend a private school or public school. Homeschoolers do it a bunch of different ways, and we really always have. I just think some
Yeah,
of these terms, like even microschooling, we were doing that before it was called microschooling, honestly,
right.
through our co-ops, and other formalized organizations. So I think parents have a lot more flexibility because what the pandemic did is it shed a bright light and a positive light on home education. And then out of that, we have different models, and parents can choose what works best for their child. So when I talk to parents about homeschooling, and I do it almost every week, counseling someone, giving some advice, coaching, there's no one way, no one right way or wrong way, right? So you can traditionally homeschool your child. So they're at home with you and you're teaching them all the subjects. You can bring in tutors. You can participate in a co op. You can enroll them in a hybrid school where they're perhaps attending classes 2 or 3 days a week, and the other couple days, you're at home with them. So there's so many different options. And I think that people are taking notice of that. And also, funding is becoming more available for those innovative non-traditional school options. And I think parents just don't be afraid. That's what I want to tell parents. Do not be scared because you truly know your child best, and you are your child's best educator because you know your children best. So
Love it. So, if my listeners and viewers want to connect with you, find out more about kids and culture, follow your progress, what is the best way for them to do that?
So you can definitely visit our website at kidsandculture.com, KIDS, the word and spelled out, and then culture.com. And then we're also on Instagram at Kids and Culture Camp, as well as on Facebook at Kids and Culture Camp. Those are probably the best ways to reach out. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So we have a Kids and Culture page on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. But we would love to, we're available to help. So if parents have questions, they need a little advice, we're happy to give it as much as possible. And we just have a wonderful team of educators who are always ready to jump in and help parents begin their homeschooling journey or just navigate, different things within their homeschooling journey. And I would just also tell parents, don't believe the hype about any negativity regarding microschooling or homeschooling. Like I told you, I have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old. My 19-year-old graduated at 16. My 16-year-old now is, going to graduate, hopefully, Lord willing, in May. And so, they had a tremendous homeschooling experience, and we're so thankful for that. And they're well-rounded. Like there's so many myths about homeschooling, Kerry, that can probably be a whole nother, a whole nother segment. But just, stay focused on your goals for your children and allow them to kind of help direct, their education as well.
Such great reassurance and encouragement for families considering an alternative educational pathway and those currently in the mix. And just so excited for everything that you're doing, Janaea. Thank you so much for being on the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you, Kerry. I appreciated every minute, enjoyed it, and look forward to connecting with you in the future.